Hello and welcome to Espresso Talks, brought to you by Vivit. In today's episode, I'm going to be speaking to superstars at Mabl, who was our big sponsor during the Testing Festival event. We're going to be covering topics like what's the future of codeless automation and kind of those how to get started kind of questions. So enjoy this podcast. And what I want to do is welcome my special guest all the way from Mabl in the US in Texas. Hey, and welcome.
I'm so happy to be here and so happy to talk to the listeners of this podcast. I work in Mabl in the engineering team. I am call myself the question asker. We right now we don't have a dedicated testing team, so I work with our engineering team to help them, uh, you know, uh, put the shine the light on the right areas to focus on when it comes to testing, help with tooling, kind of lower the barrier to make sure that we capture the right information um, for like defects, make sure that we have the right process or tooling in place to support us, and then up the developers to focus on what they like doing best, writing code and writing high quality code. So I'm working in that capacity, and Mabl is a little bit also very special since our end users are test engineers themselves. I often have a chance to work with my um, uh, people in the similar roles or similar areas that they are working on. So that makes my job even more interesting, because it almost feels like I have a extended team of testers that I can also work with and understand their concerns. And the other unique aspect of my role at Mabl is that I often act as a subject matter expert and provide feedback on the product itself, uh, because I am also one of those end users of the tool, since we also use Mabl for testing our own tool.
That's really cool. And I must admit, I love your profile. And, I was looking through it and I noticed that you talk about doing internal end-to-end testing off Mabl, right? Which I'm guessing you use Mabl for. And I always think it's a really, and we used to use the acronym, drinking your own champagne or eating your own dog food, to use, the proof in the pudding, using your own tool to automate testing your tool, which I think is the infinite paradigm, right? And you could get to the point where you're talking about inception, a story within a story within a story. But I was really excited because I looked at your profile. You said you used the dog fooding technique. What is that? Because that sounds really awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much not so nice phrase for the drinking your own champagne, like pretty much testing your tool with the tool that you're developing, and uh, learning from that, and it there are a couple of reasons why I feel this is really powerful, and then I hope more and more companies do that. In general, first because you can catch a lot of the defects even testing your tool. Our web interface is also has its challenges, and then it's not just a simple tool. It has a lot of dynamic elements, dynamic nature that you would see in real world application. They're also using a popular framework on the front end, that many of our customers are using React on their front end. So testing our own tool is beneficial, will benefit indirectly those customers as well. The other reason why I really feel so strongly about drinking your own champagne is that especially when you're a developer, or you're working in an organization where functional testing, feature testing is really the responsibility of the developers, is that uh, drinking your own champagne forces you to put your end user hat on and feel and empathize with your end users, because you're using the exact same tool that they would do, or at least automating the test for it, and mapping those user stories or into a task and implementing them. So it just helps you build that outside in perspective that this sometimes it's hard to maintain when you are working deep down in the code and you're thinking in terms of the code. So with building empathy with end users and understanding the pain points that end users go through is another benefit.
Yeah, I love that empathy kind of thing around, again, back at, where you've kind of said, well, you're using Circle CI, you're using Octopus, you're using Jenkins, and you're so used to doing that for your own internal engineering that you can kind of have empathy for the people who have got to build Mabl into their continuous testing framework, right? And one of the things I really wanted to pick your brain about, which I think is one of Mabl's is probably massively strong areas around kind of low code, is I keep on thinking there's not many tools on the market that you can onboard or get people to start using the tool and seeing benefits from within minutes and hours, right? Because usually you've got to load a tool, install it, get you to use it. Whereas your tool, whether it's a Chrome plugin or whatever it may be to start your journey, the journey to actually start being able to automate is so much easier with Mabl. Do you think that is one of the reasons for huge success within your organization is that low touch and low code combination?
I mean, what with this we see with our customers, especially where we have our end users, where we have a lot of manual testers, is that the low-code platforms is like easier transition into learning more about automation, and that is beneficial for many reasons. If you can automate certain tasks that should be automated because they are repetitive, they take a long time to do, they are error prone because you're repeating the same task, and you will probably want to consider doing automation for those end user tasks, the few and the impactful ones. And it and if you are a manual tester, how do you get started without having to understand the full stack? How you, as you say, create a source code for it, build a framework for it, use the editor, learn the programming language, and so on. When you have a tool that allows you to create those tasks very quickly, because you can pretty much record them as you go through your application, as you try to mimic the user flow through your application, and then replay it and tweak it, because the tool creates the test for you, and you can start learning some of those concepts that will be important later on if you want to go deeper into regular automation coding, if you wanted to. But at least you can learn the concepts without spending a month or so in a kind of a boot camp before you can get productive. The other reason why it is, and I hope that makes sense, Jonathan. So that this is why I feel it's really great. The other reason I feel it is really great is that tools like ourselves, our tool at Mabl, it can also help not just creating the test itself, but when you are running these tests and some of these tests are failing, again, you want to reduce the amount of time you spend maintaining your test, right? So some of these smarts that we can build into the platform for making adjusting the task automatically for trivial changes, like a locator has changed or a text has changed on something, and you don't want to have to go back and edit the test. So there's a lower kind of maintenance aspect to it as well, which again just helps to save time. So that's I feel is one bucket of the other is, again, there comes the analysis part, because that's also what should make the life of a tester easier, or even developers who create these tests, is that, when you have a system like, or tool like ours, we record a lot of information about each and every step that when you're creating an end-to-end test. So if something breaks, again, another big time sink is how quickly can you identify what has gone wrong. And if your framework records and collects all that information for you, like the network activity log, or creates screenshots, highlights how it used to be and how it is now, because you can compare the screenshots of those areas, or just record what how the page load times has changed, record any kind of console errors that you would see. Then it makes the life of the tester, or the developer who's looking into an issue much easier, because everything is in one place. And then take it to further, as a tester, you often work with issue tracking system. If your tool allows you to send all that data into your issue tracking system, then it's even better. Everything is collected in one place. You have one source of truth, and it makes that life, makes that fixing that defect much easier. The third bucket I want to kind of mention is that with local tools, I feel it is much easier for non-technical folks to understand what the tests are doing. If I were to show somebody like code, that would be the equivalent, of using any of these any popular, testing libraries, and it's I'm not trying to say that they are not useful in certain contexts, but it's much easier for like a business analyst or product manager to look at maybe a test recorded in a local tool and understand what it is doing in a high level, because Mabl at least makes a big effort to make sure that you can annotate these steps. It's easy what you see in the description of each step, what it is doing, and then when you can follow along with the screenshots when you have recorded like a task, then it makes it quite clear of what is being covered and what is being executed. So there's a much you can build a much bigger confidence that what you are testing from the end user perspective is what you actually expect to be tested.
Yeah, definitely. I love those kind of three use cases, all for because of your clarity for each one of them, right? Is this kind of we've all been burnt by maybe over promising kind of automation, and part of what I think Mabl revolutionizes the industry in is that how quickly you can get started. So kind of that 0 to 10 kind of term of just getting it some value to demonstrate potentially the power of the tool and the use case of where it's going to save you a whole stack of time. And then we all know the next big challenge really is once you've developed these tests, which, Mabl is incredibly good at, rapidly doing, part of it is maintaining those and then getting burnt with the maintenance burden, right? Which again, I think Mabl's really got with this whole self-healing capability where you can resolve, like you said, breaks in selectors or whatever it may be really quickly. And that self-healing capability means that you're going to be able to reduce the actual effort as far as maintenance is concerned. And then, leading on to that, because you're capturing so much information, like you said, of the screen, what it's doing at the same time, it makes it so much easier to do that root cause analysis, pinpoint failure analysis, to be able to diagnose what's wrong, avoid the false positives of, something slightly out, but actually get to the point where people can identify where there's potential risk and get the real value from automation. And I think that is a really unique offering that Mabl has, combining kind of low code with AI to really change the way that people automate, right, at its core level. And I really like that kind of that area. And I like the fact that, like you said, it's also, connecting into your tool for defect tracking, whether that be, Jira or Zephyr or whatever tool you use. Or I noticed you had some amazing ones for Google error reporting and, Google big data query and all the things that you're using to analyze the Google cloud services which you build it on. But being able to get that information, so that actionable bugs, so you can actually then fix them and then again retest. And I think that's just such a powerful message. Do you think that actually what Mabl's done is lower the boundary that allows testers and maybe non-technical people with the low-code capabilities to actually be able to get value out of using a tool like Mabl?
Yes, absolutely. And then, this is really the message you articulated very well, Jonathan, that we're trying to go after is that by using a tool, you save time and you can focus your efforts on higher value activities that you couldn't do um, if you weren't using a tool like ours. So because again, if you don't have to spend as much time on test maintenance, you don't have to spend that much time on creating those tests in the first place, and diagnostics is also lower. Then you can spend that budget on creating new features, which will make your development team go faster, and you can deliver value faster to your customers. Or you can, if you are a tester, you can spend the time on different types of activities that Mabl may not be able to cover. We are not saying that end-to-end testing is the be-all and end-all of all testing. There are many other aspects of testing that should happen prior and then maybe in parallel to end-to-end testing. But that definitely helps you to spend less time on something that can be automated today. The other, to me, also another very exciting aspect of the integrations that we do have, and I feel that this really little bit ties into what QA engineers and those working in testing roles really face with, is that you want to understand, you want to spend your testing dollars or testing euros, pounds on the most important activities, and the only way to do that is to understand what your users are doing and using. So for example, we do have an integration with a segment that allows you to see within our tool what pages your users are interacting with the most, what are the most beaten paths in your application, and compare and contrast it with your test coverage, right? And then that way you can tell that, hey, this beaten path is not as much covered. This is where I should be spending more time on testing. Or, hey, this area has many of these defects, because I can see that, because now I see what tests have associated defects, and then maybe I should be creating more tests in this area. Those tests may not be end-to-end tests, but at least you get real data pulled into the tool, and that tells you about the usage. That something that we didn't have to have so easy access to in the past. So this is, I think, is really, really important. It's really hard to argue against data when you have to convince your managers or some other stakeholders why you should be spending time on automating certain areas or testing certain areas, because it's the data that tells you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a massive advocate for the shift right approach to look at what behaviors are happening on the right hand side, and things like Google Analytics and Firebase and everything else. It just seems like there's so much opportunity to pull that information across to understand where you should where your users are actually going and the behaviors that they're doing, and then of course catch some of those crash analytics and issues that are potentially happening, so you can address those. But I think what I really like about that kind of message, what you said, and I've not heard the term before, but the testing dollars kind of side. I was reading some market research which says testing represents 25% of the SDLC, the software development lifecycle. And I was thinking, if you are a manager and you're thinking, or you're part of a testing or quality effort, you will need to justify buying the right tools, getting the right staff, making the right case for quality. And as you're doing that, that number, which is a huge percent, 25%, if you think of the total spend, really helps kind of justify, well, where are the dollars you should be spending it. And I think, and I know people have done this many times before, but, if you had those monopoly money testing dollars right now and you thought, what, I can spend this on my exploratory, I can expend this on my automation and regression, and you divvied that up, you probably realize that you actually, there was a use case there for a Mabl type tool to enable continuous testing as part of your pipeline, part of your regression, and there's a number of use cases where you could really benefit with spending those bucks in a more effective way. And I think that's difficult, because I think there's a paradigm between kind of maybe a lot of the people who are listening now who are either in a kind of a startup kind of mode where there's a very fast kind of fail fast learning rapid, to the opposite end where people are wanting to scale automation enterprise level. And maybe people wouldn't normally associate that with Mabl, but I've noticed that you've done a lot of work, especially obviously starting with the Ministry of Testing, getting the Boston meetup back up and going. But you're also speaking a couple of days on building and scaling functional test automation. And I think that is a really key challenge that a lot of people are having. Is, yes, strategically it might work for a certain segment of the organization, but how do they scale that automation? And then all the technologies that you've just kind of mentioned, the low code approach and the self-healing and all these kind of really smart technology, is actually going to allow it for an enterprise customer to actually be able to adopt this at a greater scale. So, part of that, without giving too much away for the MOT event, but, what are you seeing there for organizations that are enterprise and they want to scale automation? What advice would you have for them?
To me, obviously, there are a few tips, of course, that could help them scale these automation efforts. And then obviously some of it in what we have seen is works very well in some of these organizations, is that if one team adopts a tool, then how you can transplant that to work in other teams as well. And once you see the benefit, and then you create some of those patterns that can work very well with other parts of the organization, because you can measure the benefit. Other important aspects, scaling these efforts in the organization is just like the many agile practices, is often just reviewing and adjusting the needs, the tools, understanding if your business context is shifting, your user base is shifting, how you should adjust your strategy of what needs to be tested and how it should be approached. That is, again, what I mentioned. If you don't already do leveraging user data, usage statistics, either from Google Analytics, from other tools, so that that once you have a base, set of tests, where should you be going next? Another area that is I feel that often forgotten is that even it's very easy uh, uh, to get into a habit, maybe creating way too many tests, but you only want to keep as many as it makes sense, and not more, because if tests don't add value, then they should be removed. As we remove features from our product that are no longer necessary or have been outdated or replaced by other features, then you should just remove them, because that's dead weight. You don't want to carry that on. Same with your automated test suite. If you regularly review what you have and remove all those dead branches, then you will keep your test suite focused and so on. There also comes a time when, especially when you build end-to-end automation with larger teams, that there will be certain flows, certain steps in your testing that could be shared across multiple tests. Let's say logging into your application, it could be one, or just setting up test data or a test environment for you and populating it with test data. So you can start thinking about creating those reusable pieces that possibly other team members or other teams can use within your organization. That is, some of this can be specific to your application, and that goes along those lines that I mentioned initially. When you're moving from manual to learn more about automation, these skills are going to be beneficial even if you go further down the road on becoming a full automation engineer, to understand how you can reuse certain uh, pieces of your test across the test suite. Just to make it easier to maintain the tests that you have, and then make it easier for others to create those tests in the first place. In addition to that, there may be opportunities um, uh, uh, to introduce, if you have not introduced in a larger organization, uh, uh, work with developers, how they could integrate some of this end-to-end testing into their day-to-day flows, day-to-day activities. Since Mabl now can allow you to run those tests locally as well on your laptop. There is a few years ago, it was used to be common that maybe some of these end-to-end tests only happened maybe after you deploy to a particular environment, like a development or staging, or worst case, you test it in production. But now, for example, with our tool, you can allow developers to run those tests locally, and then even create them if they are up for it, which is great, because the sooner you can find out these problems that maybe only surface up on the end-to-end level, the better it is for everybody, because then when you're deploying that code even in the staging environment, there are fewer surprises. So expanding who is doing those testing, who is creating those testing, is also another way to scale your automation efforts.
No, that sounds really good. And it's kind of bringing the shift left capability and supporting the dev advocacy, right? Which I think is a really sensible approach. And, just looping back, because I know you're a bit of a BDD advocate, right? So, and I like what you mentioned before around this, being able to get subject matter experts, but also people from the business, so they're a bit more readable. I've spent a bit of time with Dan North in the past, and these approaches that make things a little bit more, you can understand exactly what tests what are the main tests that you want to run, and pull those back to, like you said, feature driven. So well, these are the main ones that are getting changed. Maybe I need to run these ones in a kind of a risk-based approach. And I also, this kind of ability to bring in new QA testing, younger testers into it, definitely kind of the Ministry of Tests kind of background, and help upskill them to be able to start creating the building foundations, whether that, like you said, it could be something that they can share and reuse, or maybe they can get help with their established automation engineers to give them the mentorship that they need to kind of and to get started, right? Are you seeing that as well, that actually you're catering for, of course, the dev centric people, the test centric, the automation centric people, but also the test centric kind of manual testers who really want to get started? Do you have any kind of tips for those on how they could start using the tool today?
Yeah, I mean, I think of what the testers in general are. I think the good testers are usually have a trait that they are naturally curious, and then these low-code tools, pride themselves on being easy to use and easy to get started. We provide quite a few resources for our new users to get started. Ones like Mabl University, where we have self-paced training classes that pretty much holds your hand and lets you get started and show you how you can test the simple cases. We also have a little sandbox application that you can, we almost call it a training ground, that you can also just test a different kind of component that you find typically in web applications. I think that's definitely one resource. And then unfortunately, there are so many great automation related courses on the internet that can help you get started. The other thing is I feel is, of course, you can always learn on your own, but I think it is even better when you as a tester can, pair with a developer and work with a developer to understand how the application is expected to work, and then figure out where to work together to come up with your good test cases that would be great to have on the end-to-end level. And that will also probably the developer will appreciate your work more when you can implement those tests, and gives you the opportunity to create impactful tests in the first place. Yeah, I feel that yeah, these are probably the most important one. And testers can also reach out to or maybe participate in some of these user interviews when you watch some of your end users to do activities in your application, see what they are struggling with, what is hard for them to understand in the first place, and think about how you could create or think for test cases, how what would be great to incorporate in your test suite. So just there are so many different ways to learn how to create tests and how to create impactful tests that it will make a difference.
No, definitely. I love the leaving on that high, the impactful tests statement, a bit like the dollar testing, right? Is that it sounds so sensible, this idea of, spend a bit of time with the dev centric side of things to understand, well, what are the changes they're making? What's the new features? What does that mean? Is there any kind of areas that might need a bit more attention this time? And then also the flip side of that to the kind of what was the business acceptance testing, but the actual use or UAT kind of phases where people are going, this is how I use the system. This is, what, that maybe some of their bugbears, and get that kind of thing back of your head saying, well, what are the tests that I should be running for that, for the end user, and also for, testing that functionality. And I think that's a really strong message. And I love the fact that you've kind of got, and we'll make sure within the show notes, the Mabl University links are on there, and also make sure we've got that. I love that sandbox kind of environment. We ran a testathon the other day, and we use Candy Mapper, which is a website which you can go in and automate, and it has different pop-ups. And part of it is, I think people have got to learn, have that playground, have that safe space where they can try something that isn't maybe what they're too close to, which is like the mobile app or the web app they're using at the moment for their office. Actually give them that time to have a little play and see how they deal with different things. And I think that's really good that you've got that sandbox kind of app, as well as the university to give them the support. And then of course, they can reach out directly to you guys and to find out more. So, with that kind of closing off, what's the best way would you recommend for people to kind of find out more about Mabl? Or, is it visit the website? Do you have YouTube videos? What's the best way for someone to find out how to leverage Mabl's capabilities?
Definitely check out our website. We regularly post on our blog. Look out for events that we are hosting, webinars. We also have, user conferences or go-to testing conferences as well. I think that's the best way to reach us.
Perfect. Well, it was, as always, it was fantastic having Mabl sponsor the testing festival, which was the biggest testing conference, 20,000 people. And I know the next one, which we're doing in September, is going to be a DevOps one. So we'll probably invite you back to do that at DevOps Festival. But it's been an absolute pleasure. And I will make sure that all the links are below, and check out the Mabl website today.
Thank you for having me, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure.